other thing I wanted to ask you, because you used to be a lawyer, I've actually launched, I'm not sure if you're aware, I've launched legal action to raise money to get a King's Council to look at the legislation and the regulations that were put out just before Christmas, by the way. No one saw them until 3 months before these will come into effect. I'm getting a lawyer to look at this because they don't think that this is legal. The limits on private property for no reason. This is meant to be a liberal democracy where we have property rights. This tramples all over that. So my question to you is, what is the Liberal Party's solution to look at this area? Because farmers are hurting. I get emails and messages from veterans who were disarmed. They served us overseas and they've been told they can't have high-velocity powered firearms because the state has decided they're dangerous. The people that served our country can no longer shoot anymore. So what is the Liberal Party's solution to looking at this issue and fixing it so the people are happy with the state that they live in?
Yeah. So a great question, Kate. I mean, the starting point is the 8th of March. It all begins on the 8th of March. That's going to be instrumental in terms of determining where we go from here. Because obviously if there's a change in government, then very significant things can be done, and things can be done in quick succession. If, however, as you say, the Cook Labor government is returned, then that becomes much more difficult, but not impossible to do anything, and that's where certainly the upper house is very, very important. So the starting point is the 8th of March. Once we know the outcome on the 8th of March, then a practical strategy can be put into place. There's a number of political levers that can be pulled. I'm somewhat reluctant to telegraph what all of those political levers are, because I know when it comes to this particular debate, my political opponents in the Cook Labor government, they hang on every word that I say on this and are ready to try and close down those avenues if possible. So I won't necessarily reveal all of those strategies that are available to us, but I'd certainly say to your audience that something definitely can be done in this space. But what is on the public record is that the starting point needs to be a review, because, and it's very important for people to understand why the review is necessary. Labor have blasted this law through. It's a gigantic piece of legislation. In 16 years in Parliament, it'd be one of the largest pieces of legislation that I've ever seen. Nothing wrong with having a big piece of legislation. The problem is that 480 of those 492 clauses were passed and put without the ability for any member to be able to ask a single question or to say anything on it. Now, that's just reprehensible. That's not what we should be seeing in a modern democracy, but that's what happened. So we can say that the first 12 clauses were scrutinised and the outcome was democratic. We certainly can't say that for the other 480. That whole bill needs to be reviewed. Now, some have said, well, why not just tear it up? And I understand the emotion behind that, but we also have to appreciate that we're dealing with a delicate, sensitive topic. No fair-minded Western Australians wants no law in place. We want to have a law in place.
Could you revert back to the 1973 laws like we did with the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act? Is that an option?
People have often thought that that's what happened with the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage laws, but it wasn't a complete reversal back to the previous law. Because what happens is some of the law is already in place. It's a transitional process. So what do you do with those scenarios where people have acted on the expectation of the existing law? Police have taken certain actions. There's been matters that have gone before the State Administrative Tribunal. We can't erase history. So we need to move forward carefully. The best way to do that is by way of a review. And the review should be done by the committee that should have done it in the first place, but Labor blocked it, and that's the Legislation Committee in the Upper House. The benefit of that is that whether you're a farmer, you're a sporting shooter, you've just got a general interest in this matter, you're in the police force, everybody will be able to have their say in a public forum, and then recommendations can be made. Because the truth of it is the entire law is not bad. The process has been reprehensible, but the entire law is not bad. For example, the current law says that if you are a member of a outlaw motorcycle gang, well, you're automatically disqualified from holding a firearm licence. Now, the ordinary fair-minded Western Australian would say, tick, that's a good piece of the legislation. We want to keep that. But there's plenty of things that are annoying fair-minded, responsible firearm owners, and they haven't had their voice heard. That's not okay. And so the review will then fix that. Now, then there will be a whole heap of people who say, okay, well, we can live with that, but what happens in the interim while the review's in place? And that's a very fair concern. And that's where government of the day is so important. So I reiterate, 8th of March really matters. You get rid of Roger Cook and we can pull some serious levers in this respect. But for as long as he's there, it's very, very difficult. That said, the small comfort is this. I attended a parliamentary committee hearing last year. The police commissioner was there and I was cross-examining him in respect to this matter, and it was very, very clear. He used the words that he gives great weight to the posture of government, was the language he used. Now, again, look, there's critics in Western Australia with regard to the current police commissioner, the former police commissioner. I get it. There's always going to be critics of police. What I will say, in fairness to this police commissioner, is that taking into account the posture of government, particularly in this context, is appropriate. You can't have an election on the 8th of March and let's say that Roger Cook is removed as the Premier and just say, oh, well, we're just going to go ahead with this legislation on the 31st of March. They're just entirely inappropriate and showing no regard for what the people have said on the 8th of March. So there is capacity for us to do something, but it needs to be done sensibly. This idea of just tearing something up and chucking it in the bin is not a responsible way to deal with firearms legislation. But then equally, you need people, like myself, who are absolutely fundamentally dedicated to this. I'll finish on this point, Kate. The great irony in this whole debate is that I'm one of the, I assume one of the few members of Parliament who's never shot a firearm in my life. It's not my background, it's not my history, it's not my passion. But, I respect others like yourself who have a great passion and history and expertise in this regard. And we're all different. That's what makes it wonderful to live in a modern democracy. Why I've been so worked up about this is the process. This has just been absolutely reprehensible. It's really been a dictatorship disguised as a democracy. Let's be honest. That's really what's been going on in the last 4 years. That's not okay. And if fair-minded people like yourself have got a strong view about this, I think you have a right to be heard in a parliamentary committee, and let's see if we can facilitate your concerns rather than frustrating them.